Welcome to part 7 of my tutorial series, and in this part I'm going to add some detail to the little line-side shed or hut, or whatever we want to call it, open fronted structure. And I'm going to use this tutorial to introduce you to another standard primitive which is extremely useful, and it's this one over here, which is called plane. Now when we select plane, it gives us, I'm just drawing it out holding down the left mouse button, it gives us a two-dimensional plane. And if we look underneath, nothing there. So it's a single face and it's a two-dimensional plane, just in X and Y coordinates, no Z coordinate. But if we check in wireframe, well, it's actually more than one face. It's actually 4 faces by 4 faces. It's 16 segments. And that's because over here, when we look at the parameters over here on the left, the parameters of the plane that we selected, plane number 1, as you can see there, it automatically gives us 4 segments of length and 4 segments of width. Now if we were to use it like that, it would mean that on every junction across the little plane here, let's lose that, rotate, every junction is a vertex. So we would have lots of vertices. So we'd have 4, 8, 12, 16, we'd have 20 vertices altogether, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, we'd have 20. We'd have 5, 10, 15, 20. We'd have 25 vertices, and that's just basically, when we reduce it to a polygon for our final model, it's just going to waste polygons. So the first thing we want to do is to come over to the plane, over to the parameters. We're in the modify selection now, and we're going to reduce those segments down to 1 each way. If it's 1 each way, then it's just 1. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 vertices, and that's a plane. Now the great thing about planes, there's a lot of very useful things that you can do with planes, and what we're going to do is we're going to use it to glaze the window, and we're going to use it to put a poster on the side of our little hut to add to it a bit. And for those we're going to need 2 extra textures. And so if we can call up our textures by clicking on the Gmax material navigator, and we don't show maps, and we want the Gmax material editor showing, and we're going to have a new one, a new standard, okay, and that takes us through to the maps which make up the texture. Remember, this is the material, and we're going to call the material poster, because we're going to use the plane as if it was a sheet of paper to post a poster on the side of our shed, a bit of advertising, and we're going to make it actually like one of those old enamel advertising signs. But it's still a texture like any other, so we go down here to diffuse color, none, so we'll select on that. And by the way, you can see poster has appeared here. These always appear in alphabetical order, and we want it to be a bitmap, so that's okay. And now it's over to our folder, which I'm using, demo for YouTube, advert. See, there's a new texture I've added in there called advert, and there it is, for Wild Woodbine cigarettes. And so we'll open that, and there it is. There's poster, and there's with the advert. So we can close that now, and let's just, using our plane, let's modify it by adding a texture. And to do that we need to unwrap the UVWs, click on that, and then choose the poster and click on apply material to the selected object, and the selected object is the plane. Click on that, and there we are. Look at that, marvelous, wonderful, great enamel sign that we can put on the side of our shed. Now all we have to do with this is to resize it so that it fits the shed, and also to get its correct orientation. So at the moment it's lying flat on the ground, which is no good. So So we've got to pick it up, move it and resize it. So let's first of all rotate it so that it's actually standing vertically, and for that we need the rotation tool and we need the correct vertex, the correct XYZ. I think that's right, maybe it's X. There we go. If you get the wrong one, don't worry, just keep doing it until you get the right one. And because we've got the angle, restrict the angles to 5-degree increments, we can turn it to 90 degrees. Here we are, here's our 90 degrees X coordinate. And we're going to put it on this side here, so actually we do want to rotate it again. This time using the Z axis, which is pointing up. You just make out the Z there. And now we'll rotate it again 90 degrees. Okay, and we can see there, and now it's been rotated on the x-axis 90 degrees and the z-axis 90 degrees. And let's rotate the whole view in perspective, and of course it's also stuck halfway in the ground. We'll sort that out. So let's just grab it, and you can see from the grid that at the moment it will go into the shed. So if we bring it further forward, you can see the grid here, line it up with the grid here. So if we bring it up to beyond it, so we know when we move it this way, it's going to be, whoops, it's going to be in front of the shed. I'm moving it in two axes, X and Y there, but just bring it forward so it's like that. Now, it's too big. Now I'm going to do something which I don't normally do. I'll try and size things up before I add the textures, but I'm going to go back here, and instead of you highlighting the latest command, I'm going to go back to plane, and this should just go back to blue. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, well, yeah. Learn something every day. And it's 9 foot 10 inches long at the moment, and it's 7 foot 6 inches high, which is far too big. So we only want it to be about, what shall we say, about 2 foot. Well, that's the wrong. I thought that was the height. So let's go 3 foot high, and let's make it 2 foot wide. Well, let's make it 2 inches wide, because I didn't do that correctly. There we are. So that's just like a little poster. Maybe we'll make it a little bit bigger. They were a bit bigger, weren't they, these enamel signs? So we'll make it a little bit longer, a little bit taller, and 3 foot. There we are. Maybe even a little bit taller. You can fiddle about like this with heart's content. 5 foot? Yeah, that looks good. So it's the sort of thing that's going to go on the side of the shed. But of course, you know, we haven't got it positioned right yet. So first of all, then, or rather the next thing we need to do is make sure its pivot is centered, and there we are, changed. So now it is actually aligned to the world. And if we were to look at the rotation, they're all back to 0 because we've realigned it. So it's no longer aligned with a 90-degree turn from its previous orientation and a 90-degree up from the floor. It's now lined up properly with the shed and with the world origin, which is why you have the world origin in Trainz, if you've ever wondered. So let's try and move it up. Try the Z. Okay, let's have a look, see where that is. Yeah, maybe that is going to be a bit big, so I might change it again, might make it smaller. So what we can do is we can select out the side of the shed wall, make sure we've got the pivot centered. Yes, that's fine. So let's center this. Remember, we can use this align tool, and we click on the side of the shed. I always try to go away from anything that's behind it, so there's the other side over there. So rather than click on this wall here, I go to there where there's just the grid behind it to make sure we get the right one. So let's click on that, and let's go X, it's disappeared, Y, Z. Okay, and you see that it just jumped back. But of course, because our shed wall is 2 inches thick and the plane has no depth in it whatsoever, it has disappeared. It's buried in the wall. So we need to bring it out from the wall. So let's select and move X. With this hovering over, I think I can just bring it out. Here we are, and there it is. Okay, jumping out, just jumping out. And if you swing it round, what you're trying to do is to get it as close to the wall as you possibly can, so that when you see it in Trainz there isn't a gap there. It just looks like it's a normal proper poster on the side. Actually the sides doesn't look too bad. So there we are, and actually if you can see a little bit, sometimes when you swing it around you get that effect of it's almost like got a bit of the wood there we are, top left it sort of showed it, bottom left, bottom right rather, there. You can see there's a sort of like those diagonal lines showing the texture underneath. But when you swing it around it's okay. So that's about, I've found through experience, that's about the best position. So we'll leave our poster there, click away, there we are, that's it done. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some glass. We're just going to glaze that straightforward square area there with glass on both on the inside and on the outside. Now there's several ways we can do this. We can either make a standard primitive, use a standard primitive which has like a box which has 6 sides, and delete 4 sides, leaving us just with a side facing into the shed and a side facing out of the shed. What I prefer to do, and what I want you to do for this tutorial, is to use the plane, and it's still just down to 1 segment each. Every time you reload Gmax it goes to 4, so you've got to remember that. So let's make another plane, and this time we're going to make a new texture and we're going to call it glass. So this is how we do the textures. Remember, we make a new standard texture, gets a new name, and we're going to call it glass, and we want to make sure it's visible, so we click on make it visible to the on the main edit window, diffuse color, bitmap, and here we have 2. We've got a bitmap, an actual BMP file, which we don't want to use at this stage. We want to use the TGA file, and it was pretty weird, don't worry. So that's the first one that we want in glass. That's the diffuse color, and if we were to apply it like that it would just be a solid pale green. But what we're going to do is alter its opacity, and that's one of the options down here, opacity. Okay, and we click on that, double click on this, and now we choose the bitmap, which is just a grey file. Click on that, and now we have 2 maps. And if we look over here, if we were to turn on maps, our glass, because remember it's in alphabetical order, has actually got both of those listed. Okay, so now we try and apply glass to our plane. Click on glass to select it, and click on this, apply the material to the selected object, and there it is. And you can see that there is a degree of transparency there. It's strictly speaking that's translucent in that it is not completely transparent, which means that there is a slight colour cast on the glass. Old glass tends to have a greenish, very slight greenish tinge, and that's what that's reproducing. So now we're going to rotate it like we did with this one. We're going to rotate it till it's upright, 90 degrees. Okay, we're not going to worry that it's too big for this, and we shall make sure that it is aligned to the world. There we are, and it actually changed. And then we're going to align the whole sheet to the back wall, which means it will disappear because it's got no depth to it. Remember, it's just a plane, and it's going to sink into the 2-inch depth thickness of the back wall. So we're going to click on that, click on, and you see it's rectangle 02, which is the back wall, and we click on this and this and this. Okay, and it's so big you can actually see some of it there, and it's just showing through. So now if I just choose Y, because for some reason at the moment, no, I'm wrong there, it is Z, there we are, for the vertical, to move it vertically, and we move it vertically, and there we are, there's a bit of glass. I know we should have glazing bars and, you know, all that frame around it or anything like that, and it's actually much bigger than it needs to be. If we were to look at that in wireframe, you can see it's a much bigger piece of glass than we actually need. And if you want to get really pernickety, then you can reduce this to a poly and bring the vertices up, or even if you want to go into plane and change its depth, let's change its depth. Instead of 2 foot 8 inches, we just make it 2 foot, and there you are, it's just reduced it. To be honest, so long as the rest of it's hidden, it doesn't make an absolute difference at all, any difference at all. So you can just about see that looking through the glass at the grid, the grid is slightly paler than over here, which means there's a piece of glass there. It's an almost transparent plane that we've added in, and that will come out in Trainz. That's how we do windows, how we make glass in Trainz. And let's have a look around the back. Well, there's no difference there, because remember, our plane has no back. It's just 2D facing towards the front. So, for example, we'd used a box instead. That would have had a face facing the inner part of the shed and a face facing beyond the back of the shed, out this way. But because we've used a plane, we've only got one direction of texture. But again, it's very easy to solve that problem. Just choose the Z-axis, click on Edit, Clone, and then just in the Z-axis, just rotate that, our clone, rotate it. It's rotating in 2 directions, so we don't want that. We only want, it's got ZX there. We only want Z. Pick up our clone again. Make sure only Z is highlighted. Ugh. Don't like this in Gmax. We'll try it down here. See if I can do it this way down here. 180. There we are. So it's just, instead of rotating it with tool, I just rotated it by changing the angle. And so now we have glass that is acting as glass from this direction and from this direction as well. So that's another, and you can actually see there the difference in the tone, the colour of the wood from here to here, and that shows that that plane is actually working as glass. And the fact that they're sitting on top of each other doesn't make any difference, because you're looking at them from 180 degrees. What you do need to do is make sure this pane of glass is the pivot, center to object, align to world. Make sure it's correct. And now if I click away from that, and it's the one round the back is the one that's selected, and if I click on there, it's the one facing this way that's selected, and we'll find, I think, that that is already aligned to the world. Okay, so there we are. So that's how you use planes, or one way of using planes. There's quite a few other ways as well. This is the way I really like to do it. For example, if I wanted to add some cross timbers here, but which didn't really have any much depth to them, then I can make a plane, stretch it across there, texture it with the planks, and reduce the texture, the amount of texture that I'm using just of one of the planks, and it will stretch a plank across there. The reason why I like these planes is they can be very small with regard to polys. They're just really very small indeed. Let me demonstrate just before I finish this tutorial. Here's the polygon counter. At the moment, this plane here, let's have a look in modify. It is a plane still, and I've just textured it, so it's 2 polys, which is not very much anyway. But we can still save, always you want to save polys. So let's collapse and collapse down to an editable poly, and when I do that, I've just clicked away from it for a moment. It's 2 at the moment. When I change this to editable poly, watch this. Okay, watch the budget. Changes to 1, which is the lowest poly count you can get for an object. You can't actually get it any lower. 1. It's got to be at least 1 poly, otherwise it doesn't exist. And let's do the one at the back, which is 2 at the moment, and it's still a plane. Convert it to an editable poly. 1. So by putting a poster and 2 sides of a pane of glass into the window there, we've added a bit more detail to the shed, and we've learnt how to use planes, or one way how to use planes, the advantage of planes. We've added 2 more textures here, and our shed is beginning to improve.